So you're thinking about making the move to Utah. Well, before you pack your bags, here are the surprising truths about the Beehive State that no one will tell you. Both the incredible truths and the surprising downsides that no one really talks about. Now, in this video, I'm going to cover the top 10 pros and the top 10 cons that I hear most commonly from people who have recently located to Salt Lake City. And if you want to know exactly what it's like to live here in Salt Lake City, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We post weekly videos on here to give you exactly what it's like from an insider's perspective, not just real estate related, but everything encompassed if you actually want to live in Salt Lake City. Now, there is a lot to love about living in Utah, but I'm going to specifically cover the top 10 pros that I hear most commonly from other people who live here. The first is Utah tends to be a very family-oriented community. In fact, 28% of the population in Utah are couples with kids. Utah is actually the youngest state by the median average across the country. That means we have a lot of youth and a lot of kids here. Tends to attract a lot of young families. For whatever reason that may be, maybe it's the strong public school system, maybe it's the education on top of the employment opportunities here, but there tends to be a lot of young families that want to move to Utah. Not only that, but Utah is actually ranked number 2 in education by the US News and World Report, which again goes back to the aspect of having kids and wanting a strong education for your family. It makes sense why a lot of people would want to move to Utah. The second is our overall outdoor and specifically winter sports that we offer here. We have some of the best skiing around. In fact, you could argue it's some of the best skiing in the entire United States. We have 10 major ski resorts, and we're world renowned for having some of the best winter sport activities like skiing and snowboarding. In fact, we're going to host the 2034 Winter Olympics. We made a video about it here if you want to learn more about that. But there's a reason why there's so many people that like to come visit here in the wintertime, specifically to take advantage of our world-renowned ski resorts. There also tends to be a lot of races available. So people that are into triathlons or they like mountain biking or running, there's a lot of nearby races. I feel like I see it in the news all the time that you can participate in some of these outdoor activities year-round. There's also a ton of leisurely activities available in the Wasatch Mountains. We're so close to that mountain environment living in Salt Lake City. We even have tons of campgrounds in places like Mill Creek Canyon where you can go rent for the night or go enjoy an outdoor family barbecue. And let's not forget, Utah has 5 national parks that are also world renowned. People from all over the world come to visit these national parks because they are such a unique experience that you can only find here in Utah. Number 3 is the healthy living. Now, not only do you have these outdoor recreational activities, but Utah ranks very high when it comes to overall health standards. Additionally, Utah has one of the lowest obesity rates of any state in the country. In fact, a whopping 83% of adults in Utah report being actively engaged in physical activity on a regular basis. That is much higher than you would expect throughout the country. When I drive around Salt Lake City, I oftentimes see things like Pilates studios or yoga studios all over the place. So we do offer a wide variety of physical fitness activities depending on what you're interested in. Now, I've lived all over the country to include the South, and I've noticed that here in Utah, there's way less fast food chains and options that you might find in some other parts of the country. I think that also plays a big role. Number 4 is the economy. Utah is growing quite rapidly. In fact, between July of 2022 to July of 2023, we had 56,000 people moving here to Utah. Whenever you see an increase in population, it often means it's because people can, expect to live a reasonably comfortable lifestyle here in Utah, where there's a strong economy, low unemployment, and so forth. In fact, that US News and World Report ranked Utah as the number 3 economy out of the 50 states. And in fact, we're number 1 for unemployment. Some of the major employers in the area are things like the Intermountain Healthcare System, Adobe, Goldman Sachs. There's some major players in the area that are attracting residents from all over the country. Utah also has the 17th lowest unemployment rate, currently sitting at around 3.2%. Number 5, Utah has ranked as one of the most business-friendly states in the country, and that trend continues today. Now, being business-friendly encompasses a few things. Number 1, we tend to have low corporate tax rates. We have a growing and thriving tech sector, and we have a lot of policies in place that are very pro-business friendly. That's why you're seeing a lot of companies relocate here to Salt Lake City. In fact, Utah was ranked number 1 by Forbes in terms of being a business-friendly state, and the policies and laws that we have in place to help encourage more companies to move here. Number 6, many Utah cities consistently rank as one of the cleanest in the nation. Places like Provo, Orem, and certain parts of Salt Lake City are really known to have well-maintained streets. They have very clean parks, and that's really attractive for people, especially with young families that want to go enjoy the outdoors, but they want to be in a clean environment. And in fact, many of these suburbs have adopted recycling programs to help reduce the overall landfill waste. Salt Lake City has reduced 40% of its overall waste from landfills by adopting some of these recycling programs. Number 7 is our parks and golf courses. Now, what's crazy, and one of the first things I noticed when we moved here, is Utah has over 400 golf courses throughout the state. So you have a lot of people that like to come and enjoy the outdoors. In fact, you even have certain country clubs around the area, such as the Willow Creek Country Club or the Hidden Valley Country Club, that really helps the overall value of the local real estate when the market appreciates. And then you have areas like St. George, which is really known as a vacation market, and you have people from all over wanting to come enjoy the parks and golf courses that are offered in St. George. Number 8 is overall low crime rate. Now, a lot of these stats you can go and look up on your own, but a lot of people, when they're trying to figure out where they want to live, they're looking at 2 major factors: crime rate and public school rankings, right? Utah is ranked 9th in terms of having the lowest overall crime and violent crime rates. And if you want to check out more crime rate stats, make sure to look at the description below. I'll post in there some specific websites where you can do some more research. And number 9, Utah tends to have a lower homelessness rate than some of these other nearby markets, such as Portland, Seattle, and the San Francisco area. In fact, Utah has implemented a Housing First initiative. Salt Lake City has implemented several of these government programs to help reduce the overall homelessness issue, and I think you've seen that play out over the last few years. At number 10 is the proximity to other major markets. Now, this is important for a couple of reasons. Number 1, when you're close to other major markets, it increases the tourism and overall revenue of the state. When you're really close to other markets, people want to come and experience Utah and what it has to offer, whether it's the beautiful summers where you can come and enjoy the outdoors, or during the snowy season in the winter to enjoy the local ski resorts. But being in close proximity to these markets really helps the overall tourism of the state of Utah. Now, you could also look at it from a leisurely activity standpoint, right? When you're only a short drive away from areas like Las Vegas or Denver, you're really within a 1 day's drive of being able to experience other local markets, and you're not just completely isolated from the rest of the country. In fact, you're a short, about a 2 to 3 hour flight, depending on where in California you want to go to. So a lot of people that want to go to California, for vacation is really just a short flight away. But Utah also has some drawbacks. So next I'm going to hop into the 10 cons. The first being the housing market. Now, the median sales price in Utah is $645,000 compared to the national average of $412,000. You can see why Utah is ranked as the 9th most expensive state in the country. Now, there's a few reasons for this. Number 1, we've talked about the population increase, and anytime you have more people moving into an area and you don't have enough supply to keep up with demand, you will see prices go up. We're also landlocked. We have mountain ranges and major lakes that prevent developers from really being able to increase the amount of supply necessary to keep those prices under control. The second big con, I would say, is the overall freeway and coordinate system. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the coordinate system, basically you have the temple downtown and everything is based off of that. It is convenient once you get the hang of it, but especially for people new to, all the addresses are basically a bunch of numbers and a north, south, east, or west. But we really only have one major freeway that goes through Salt Lake City. It can get very congested during rush hour, and we really don't have any major freeways that run east and west, in that corridor, which makes it much more difficult to travel to certain parts of the city. Number 3 are the liquor laws. Utah tends to be a little bit more conservative state than the rest of the country. So the liquor laws here are much more strict. We've talked about this plenty in other videos, but essentially it's really hard to buy anything more than just beer at the grocery store. You have to go to a state-run store. It's not going to be open on holidays or on Sundays. So it definitely tends to be a little bit more strict from that standpoint. Restaurants and other establishments also have a very hard time getting a liquor license in the first place. They make it much more stringent here than they do in other markets. And number 4, Salt Lake City also has a very limited nightlife. That's kind of tied to the liquor laws to a degree, but it's very hard to be able to go enjoy the nightlife out in downtown Salt Lake City. And in fact, anywhere outside of downtown and all these other suburbs, they tend to be much more, quiet. They don't really have a nightlife to offer, with a few exceptions. So if that's something you're looking for, Utah might not be the best place to move to. At number 5 is the radon levels. Now, radon is extremely common in Utah, given our soil composition. In fact, 30% of homes are deemed to have unsafe levels of radon according to the EPA. And in fact, radon is the #1 cause of lung cancer among non-smokers because it is such a common thing here in Utah, and because we have so many basements where you'll see higher radon levels. I highly recommend getting a radon test and potentially a radon mitigation system installed in your home. At number 6, a lot of people complain that Utah has a lack of overall diversity. Now, you can kind of see that in the makeup of our demographics. About 85% of the population here is Caucasian. Now, there are certain parts of Salt Lake City that are becoming more diverse, and you're seeing a lot more people of other ethnicities move to this area. But overall, the stigma of Utah being a predominantly white community is still relatively true. 60% of the community identifies as being part of the LDS Church, which is a very high percentage of one particular religious affiliation. So I can see the argument that maybe Salt Lake City isn't the most diverse, especially if you're coming from other areas, like Southern California or Miami, where it's a little bit more common. At number 7, a lot of people complain that Utah is too conservative. This is especially true for some of those issues like LGBTQ rights, abortion laws, or immigration. Utah has implemented several restrictions on abortion. In fact, a state law was passed in 2020 that bans most abortions after 18 weeks of pregnancy. Additionally, in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, Utah passed a trigger law that bans abortion with exceptions only for things like rape, incest, or if the mother's life is at stake. This is certainly more conservative than you would see in a lot of states. Now, some people really like that. Some people don't like that at all, but just something to be aware of if you're going to move to Salt Lake City. Number 8 is the weather. Now, we tend to have pretty, extreme summers and winters because we're in a mountain environment. In fact, it's not uncommon, to have peak temperatures above 100 degrees in the months of July and August, especially in places like southern Utah, where you can see some pretty extreme temperatures, and it tends to be very dry. Now, I like that because I'm not really a fan of the humidity, but for some people, maybe it will affect you, or if you have certain skin conditions, that dry weather can be a nuisance. Number 9, I hear a lot of people complain that there's really a lack of dining experience in Salt Lake City. I will say there's not nearly as many options or authentic restaurants as you would see in some other areas of the country. And in fact, in certain parts that are still growing, like Harriman, Riverton, you really do have a lack of overall restaurants that you can choose to experience. At number 10, and this is actually the one I disagree with the most, is people feel like Utah is not a welcoming place. Now, I'm going to make an argument for and against that. Now, the argument for Utah not being a welcoming place is sort of that, stigma of having a lack of diversity. You have a high population of the LDS Church. And so a lot of people, think that, well, if I move to this area and I'm not part of these communities, am I going to be ostracized and not really be welcomed? I'm sure some people have experienced that, but I could say from my own personal experience, I have not had an issue necessarily with just because I'm not part of certain organizations. I would make the argument actually that people in Utah tend to be very friendly, right? You tend to have a lot of family-oriented communities, a lot of welcoming people. And yes, that might change over time, but I actually do think Utah tends to be a very welcoming place. If you disagree with that, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what other people have experienced. Now, there is the top 10 pros and cons from what we've heard from other people. And, we talk to people all the time that are thinking about moving to Salt Lake City. If you have specific questions or concerns, make sure to reach out to us. Our contact information is below. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you can be the first to learn about what's going on here in Salt Lake City, as we're constantly seeing changes in the market.